You've probably heard this a lot lately, that nobody wants to work anymore. It shows up in headlines, TikToks, even political debates. But what if it's not completely true? When people talk about why nobody wants to work, they tend to fall into one of two groups. There is Camp 1, made of the critics. This group has business owners and seasoned workers. They point fingers at young people. They say, kids these days don't want to work. They'd rather scroll TikTok. Then there is Camp 2, and it has the realists. This crowd says, sure, people don't want to work for bad pay and worse bosses. Treat people right, and they'll show up. Both sides have a point, but the real question is why these perspectives are so far apart. Right now in the US, there are about 9 million open jobs, and that's more than the population of New York City. And unemployment is around 4%, which means most people are working. So if millions of people still have jobs, why does it feel like nobody wants one? Here's the thing. Back in 1970, the average home cost just 2.5 times a yearly salary. Today, it's closer to 8 times. Wages haven't risen much since the late 70s, while rent, healthcare, and tuition shot through the roof. From 1950s to 1980s, the idea of the American dream was actually doable. One full-time job, often just the dad's paycheck, could cover a mortgage, groceries, a car, and even a family vacation once in a while. So when boomers say, we worked hard and made it work, they're not wrong. They just played a totally different game. For millennials and Gen Z, the math simply doesn't add up. Okay, so money is one side of the story, but what's the other side? A Gallup study found that 77% of workers say they've experienced burnout at their current job. That's not just stress. Burnout is exhaustion, cynicism, and feeling like your work doesn't matter. And when you're tired, underpaid, and undervalued, well, no surprise people check out mentally. Millennials and Gen Z are especially pushing back. You've probably heard the phrase quiet quitting. But here's the thing. It doesn't actually mean quitting. It means doing the job you were hired for, not working unpaid overtime, not sacrificing your health just to look loyal. For decades, the 9-to-5 office grind was treated as non-negotiable. But when COVID hit, millions of workers suddenly got a taste of something different. Remote work, flexible schedules, more time with family, even just the ability to cook lunch in their own kitchen. And once people saw that the world didn't collapse when they worked from home, going back to a cubicle started to feel like a punishment. The data proves it. A Pew Research survey found that 35% of US workers say they'd quit their job if they were forced back into the office full-time. That's not a small rebellion. That's millions of people saying no thanks to the old system. We also saw what's now called the Great Resignation. In 2021 alone, over 47 million Americans voluntarily quit their jobs. That's the highest number ever recorded. And it wasn't just retail or fast food workers. Professionals in tech, healthcare, and education were leaving in massive numbers. People realized that work doesn't have to control your entire life, and they started asking a bigger question. If I'm going to risk my health, my time, and my sanity, what am I really getting out of it? Now let's talk about generations, because how people see work has a lot to do with when they grew up. For boomers, the story was simple. Work hard, stay loyal to your company, retire with a pension. Stability was built in. And for many of them, it worked. But for millennials, that's a totally different story. They entered the workforce during the 2008 financial crisis, got buried under student loans, and discovered that loyalty to a company doesn't guarantee stability anymore. A Deloitte study shows 63% of millennials don't think they'll ever retire comfortably. That's not lack of ambition, that's math. Then you have Gen Z. They're digital natives, they grew up with YouTube side hustles, TikTok creators, crypto, and gig work. For them, the idea of sticking around at one company for 30 years sounds like science fiction. The survey by Deloitte found that 74% of Gen Z workers say flexibility is more important than salary. Let that sink in. Most would rather have control of their time than a bigger paycheck. And you see it everywhere online. Gen Z memes about I don't dream of labor or TikToks of people quitting jobs in real time. To older generations, it looks like laziness. But for Gen Z, it's a shift in values. They're asking, why should I burn out for a paycheck that doesn't even cover rent? So it's not that nobody wants to work anymore, it's that each generation has learned the hard way that the old promise, work hard, get rewarded, doesn't hold up the way it used to. Here's where things really sting. While workers are burning out, companies are cashing in.
Corporate profits in the US hit a record of $3.3 trillion in 2024. That's the highest ever recorded. And yet, real wages for the average worker have barely budged in decades. So where's all that money going? Straight to the top. CEO pay has exploded, literally. Since 1978, CEO compensation has increased by over 1,400%. Meanwhile, the average worker's pay only went up around 18% in the same period. That means the gap between the person running the company and the people actually making it run is now wider than ever. And this isn't just about money, it's about how workers are treated. A survey from the Economic Policy Institute found that 16% of workers say they've had wages stolen by employers through things like unpaid overtime, illegal deductions, or misclassification. That adds up to billions quietly taken from paychecks every year. Right now, about 36% of US workers do freelance or gig work in some form, according to Upwork. And that number is growing fast. Projections suggest that by 2030, nearly half of the workforce could be gig workers. That's Uber drivers, Instacart shoppers, freelance designers, YouTubers, Twitch streamers, basically anyone working outside the 9-to-5 model. Gig workers decide their hours, choose their gigs, and avoid the office drama. And for many, it's not a side hustle, it's their main source of income. A report by MasterCard projected that the gig economy will generate $455 billion annually by the end of 2025. But here's the catch. While gig work offers freedom, it rarely offers benefits. No healthcare, no retirement plan, no job security. So while people are technically working, they're also living with way more instability. Still, for many millennials and Gen Z, the freedom outweighs the risks. It's why you see so many people trying to monetize their hobbies, grow side hustles, or become creators. Because if work is going to be unstable anyway, they'd rather bet on themselves than on a corporation that sees them as disposable. This whole nobody wants to work anymore debate isn't just happening in America, it's global. Take Japan, for example. They even have a word for it, karoshi, which literally means death by overwork. In Japan, long hours and burnout have become such a problem that the government has had to step in with policies to encourage rest and work-life balance. Meanwhile, Europe has been running in the opposite direction. France legally caps the workweek at 35 hours, and companies can get fined for making employees answer emails after hours. Spain and the UK have been testing 4-day work weeks, and early results are impressive. Companies report higher productivity, and employees say they're happier, healthier, and less likely to quit. Even in Iceland, a massive nationwide trial of shorter work weeks showed that workers were just as productive, sometimes even more productive, when working fewer hours. And now more than 80% of Iceland's workforce has shifted to shorter schedules or gained the right to request them. The trend is clear. Around the world, people are rethinking the old model of working more hours to earn more money. And instead, they're asking, what's the point of all this work if it's destroying our health, our families, and our happiness? So after looking at wages that barely budge, sky-high housing costs, crushing student debt, burnout, and workplaces that treat people like cogs, what's the takeaway? But younger generations are flipping the script. They're saying that success isn't just about a paycheck. It's about freedom, time, and meaning. They'd rather freelance, start side hustles, or create content than grind away in jobs that demand everything but give back very little. This isn't just a personal choice. It's a wake-up call for employers, policymakers, and society. Treat your workers well, pay them fairly, respect their time, or watch the talent walk away. So next time someone rolls their eyes and says kids these days don't want to work, just remember, work hasn't changed. People have. And maybe that's exactly what the world needed.